Yesterday, we were discussing about investments. We will be moving from we have covered all these entries yesterday, the basic entries. The losses we have discussed again, or the loss arising out of it. Ideally, yesterday we have understood only the fair value decrease or increase. To exactly sell an investment, you are going to realize the money. That is, yesterday we have seen when you compare the existing investments with the fair value, there could be a difference. It can be the fair value can be high or low. When the fair value is high, it will be resulting into a gain. When the fair value is low, it will be resulting into a loss. And this gain or loss cannot be considered to be a realized gain, realized loss, because literally you are not realizing anything, you are not sold anything, and hence you are not realizing. But the next case, right now, what we are going to discuss will be nothing but when you literally sell an investment in the market, you will be realizing the money. Suppose the value of your investments in the books is, say, 100 million. Now, if you want to dispose of this investment, assume that you are going to get, say, 120 million. That means the entire 120 million you will be getting it from the market. This 120 million is what you are going to get in your hands. Ideally, the value, the cost of the investments, what I have incurred is only 100, but you are going to get 120, 20 more than the actual cost. So this 20 is your profit. This is realized. So how are we going to treat this realized again? That is one. Second thing, the value of the investments is 100 lakhs, 100 million. When you sell, you are realizing only 90. That means you are realizing something less. 10 million less than the actual cost. So it's a loss. This, your realized amount is low. So this is a real time loss. And this investment is never going to appear in your books anymore because you have already sold. How you are going to book it? When there is a gain, the accounting entry will be you are selling the investment, so cash will be debited to the extent of the money what you are realizing. Investment account will be credited to the extent of the original acquisition price, and the difference gain will be credited to gain on sale of investments. This gain on sale of investments will be transferred to the P&L because it's a gain. I'll repeat. When you are receiving 120 lakhs, when the cost of the investment is only 100, here there is a clear-cut gain of 20. Your cash account will be debited to 120 million. That's the sale price. Realized value. Second will be the investment account will be credited to the extent of the actual original acquisition price, which is in this case, example, it is 100. The difference of 20 will be taken to credited to gain on sale of investments. This gain on sale of investments will be transferred to P&L ultimately. This is the entry. Are you clear? Suppose if there is a loss, when you sell, it can result into a gain or a loss. What is going to happen when it is a when there is a gain? When there is a loss? Suppose the actual cost of the investment is 100, you are getting only 90, 10 will be the loss. Accounting entry will be cash account debit to the tune of whatever realized amount. In this case, only 90. The loss is 10. So, loss on sale of investments will be debited 10. Then credit investment account 100. This is the entry. This loss again will be transferred to the P&L. Hope this is the entry whenever we are selling the investments. Is this clear? Fine. Listen. So regarding the dividends, the dividends received, how this is going to be accounted, this is what we are going to learn. See, the investments can be of different types. One, when we are investing it into debt security, we would be receiving interest. When we are investing it into the equity component, we are going to get the dividends. Okay. The dividends, that is cash dividends, what we are supposed to get. Dividends can be stock dividend or cash dividend. There are so many different varieties of dividend. Cash dividend means dividends are going to be given, settled by way of payment of cash. Such kind of dividends can be said to be cash dividends. In the case of this cash dividends, it might be applicable to common stock or preferred stock. Dividend can be applicable to, it's a preferred dividend, preferred stock dividend, common stock dividend, either way. Both these dividends can be settled by way of payment of cash. When you are settling such dividends by way of payment of cash, what is going to be the accounting entry? I'll explain. Look into this. First, you have to pass an entry for the receivable portion. You have to accrue the income. It's a dividend income. So, dividend receivable account will be debited. Dividend income account will be credited. Receivable is an asset. You have to receive this money from the company which has declared the dividend. It's an income for you. You are crediting the income. This dividend income will be taken to the P&L as an income. Dividend receivable, basically speaking, it is just like a customer's account where you have to receive the money after registering a sale. You are selling the goods to a customer. Customer has to give you this money. This dividend receivable is again equal to that. You have to receive this dividend. When the other company pays you the dividend, accounting entry will be cash account will be debited, dividend receivable account will be credited. Normally, you might ask me a question. Why don't we pass this entry in a different manner by debiting cash and crediting dividend income? Because this dividend receivable, debit and credit are going to mutually cancel. So basically, cash account debit and dividend income credit. That's a final entry. This entry will also be the best. Probably you might be thinking in this way. But in accounting, there is always a way of doing things. Basically, whenever the company declare the dividend, immediately the company which is supposed to receive this dividend will be creating a provision accruing this income. Payment will be happening later. It will take another 20 days or 25 days. Within 1 month only you have to pay, we have to, or the other company has to pay. But whenever such dividend is declared, immediately the income will be accrued by passing an entry dividend receivable account debit to dividend income. So this basically you are recognizing the receivable and the income immediately. When you receive, you might be receiving it later. Whenever you are receiving, cash account will be debited, dividend receivable account will be credited. There ends the job. Is this clear? Now, any doubt you can ask me. Fine. Next is stock dividend. Stock dividend means, I will explain the basic concept. Earlier, your company has settled you the dividend by way of payment of cash. In this case, the dividend is declared, but the settlement is happening not by way of payment of cash, but by way of issuance of the corresponding stock. Stock means the shares are going to be given. So, here there are increase in the shares. Additional shares are received in a stock dividend. Whenever you are receiving the share, basically speaking, there is no need to pass an entry for receipt of these shares. When you are receiving the stock dividend, basically speaking, there is no income which is recognized in the books on account of stock dividend because only the number of shares are increasing. So basically speaking, you can't pass an entry for the number of shares because you don't pay any money. Are you clear? See, this is an American concept. But in India, I will tell you what we do normally. Even in when you are receiving the stock as dividends, there is an increase in the additional share. There is a value for the dividend. The shares what you are going to receive will be equal to the value of this dividend. So it is as good as receiving cash and investing it in the shares of the other company. Because they are giving you share, no cash is being received by you. So what you will do, you will be debiting the investment account and crediting the dividend income. Because you are investing it into the shares of the other company, so you are getting the stock. So you will be debiting the investments, crediting the dividend income. But in US GAAP, they say very clearly that you will not be passing any accounting entry. Since you are receiving only additional shares without even paying any cash, they say no entry is required and hence you won't be recognizing the revenue on account of receipt of a stock dividend. Is this clear? Any doubt you can ask me. Next aspect is liquidating dividend. What do you mean by liquidating dividend? See, normally dividends are paid out of your earnings. Every year, this company would be registering some earnings, there is profit, operating profit, business profit, net profit. Out of this profit, dividends are given. There is a common practice. But when the dividends are not given out of the retained earnings, but given out of your own source capital, suppose say the ordinary share capital or the common stock capital is 100 million, comprising of some 10 million shares of $10 each, which is equal to 100 million total value. When you are going to pay off the dividend, when you pay off from this 100 million an amount to them, that is what is said to be liquidating dividend. Your common stock capital will reduce. This liquidating dividend is hence considered to be a return of the investor's capital. You are investing your money by subscribing a share. From that 100 million, I am giving you this 10 million or 50 million. When I give you, your capital will get reduced. Such a payment of dividend is to be liquidating dividend. Hope this is clear. I would just want you to read these two paragraphs regarding liquidating dividend. Please read and confirm it. Once you read, kindly confirm so that I can move on. Here, the accounting entry will be the value of the investments will come down. So debit cash, credit investment. That's all. Value of investments comes down. This is how you pass an entry for the liquidating dividend. I will now explain how the dividend entries will be passed when there is a significant influence or control. I will tell you what the significant influence first of all is. Only then you would be able to appreciate the entries related to the what are the dividends. So see, kindly listen. More than 1% shares in B company. This is scenario number one. Next is a company has acquired more than 20% but up to 50%. B company. Three, acquired less than up to 20% shares in B company. Three different scenarios. Hope you are listening. One, A company has got more than 51% shares in B company. So A company is the major shareholder. In this case, considered to be subsidiary of A, or A is holding company of B. Hope this point is clear. Case number one, A company has acquired more than 51%. So B is subsidiary of A, or A is referred as the holding company of B. In this case, is said to have full control on B company. See, in India, Indian Parliament, 272 seats is the minimum seats required to rule, which is equal to 51%. Any number of extra seats will be helping the parties to rule. That is the party which is going to rule. Similarly, in a company, say B, for example, A has acquired more than 51. It can be 51, 55, 60, 75, 70, 78, 80, 90, whatever may be the proportion, A is said to be exercising full control. Suppose A is acquiring 70% shares in B, remaining 30% shareholders are considered to be minorities. Rather, we will be referring it here as non-controlling interest. Hope it is clear. Point number two. A company has acquired more than 20% shares, but only up to 50% shares in B company. That means A company is not the major shareholder. In this case, A and B company is referred as the A company, and A company is said to have significant control on B company. In the first case, A company has got full control. In the second case, A company does not have full control but has significant control. See, I will tell you what is the meaning of this term significant control. A cannot take any decision regarding B, but A's opinion will be counted before somebody else is taking the opinion regarding any affairs of B company. That means A cannot be discarded because A is holding 30%. A cannot be discarded. Somebody might be holding 70%. He is the decision maker, but 30% will be consulted. Their opinion will be counted. Their opinion will be sought. Then A company, the major shareholders are going to take the decision. So, though B company is not the sole decision making authority, A company is not the sole decision making authority, A company is not the controller of B, still A's opinions are counted in this case because A can influence the decision making process in B. So it is said that A has a significant control on B. That's all. Last case. He has acquired up to 20% shares in B company. There is no control in B, neither significant control nor full control. In this case, when B is giving the dividend, how A is going to account? That's what we have seen just now. Correct? Now, if it is case number 2, that is when there is a significant control. A has got significant control on B, and B is releasing the dividend. How this dividends will be accounted by A company? Here, A company will be in the case of significant control. A company will be accounting for the dividend by applying the method of accounting. What is the equity method of accounting? A company has 30% shares in B company. During the year 2018, B has made a profit of 600 million. B company has made a net profit of 600 million. Now, assume B company is not distributing any dividend during the year. We pretty well that the entire profit belong to the shareholders. This is profit made by the company. That means 600 million is available to be distributed to shareholders. But this company is not distributing any dividend during the year. In all the shareholders treating this profit of as being retained in the company as further investment. Yes, of course. This is supposed to be given to the shareholders. If shareholders are not being given, shareholders will assume that this 600 million is reinvested in the company itself as retained earnings. It's retained. Now listen, 600 million profit is available for the entire shareholders. A company is a shareholder in this company. A company is a shareholder holding 30% shares. This profit of million to a company. This 30% since A not receiving it. Investment further made into B company. Hence, the accounting entry in this regard be, listen, the accounting entry in this regard will be income for a company. The percentage of 600, which is equal to 180 million. So accounting entry will be this income from investment account will be taken to the P&L. Investment account will be upgraded by 180 million. Is this clear? Any doubt you can ask me. Out of the 600 million, 180 million profit belong to me. I am not going to receive this money. Entire amount is retained over there. So 180 million will be debited to investment. This would be treated as an income. I am going to take it to income account. Kindly understand this clearly and let me know whether you are clear. Hello? What about others? Now, Scenario 2, out of the profit of 600 million is distributing dividend of 300 million retained. A company will be receiving dividend of being 30% of 300 million. Mean that the balance of 9, that is 180 million income minus 90 received, is still retained and treated as investment by a company. The accounting entries in this scenario, entry number 1 regarding the dividend, cash account debit 90, this the retained portion. Is it clear? Kindly go through. Confirm that you are that this is clear. If you have any doubt, you can ask me. This is how the equity method of accounting is being done by the companies which are having significant control. Now, I'll take you through the PPT. Entry number 1 is acquisition of equity method investments, investment to cash. Kindly go through the entries for the cash dividend. Kindly go through, please. kindly go through the concept of non-controlling interest. I have explained what is non-controlling interest. I request you to kindly read this paragraph, confirm that it is clear. Whatever I said earlier is being explained. Once you complete reading, kindly let me know. Please read this carefully. Fine. We are through with this portion. We are entering into the next topic, which is property, plant, and equipment. Property, plant, and equipment is a tangible non-current asset. Tangible non-current asset means fixed asset. Tangible fixed asset. Property, plant, and equipment are tangible in nature. It has physical existence. It can be quantified and measured physically. So this is considered to be tangible non-current assets or tangible fixed assets. This includes land, buildings, any plant and machinery, any other equipments like computers, furnitures, so many things are part and parcel of this property, plant, and equipment. Now, what we are going to learn here will be how this kind of property, plant, and equipment are recorded initially in the books. When you buy, how this is recorded. There is a point to be noted. Initial recording means you all will be buying lot of assets. Company can buy lot of assets. The asset can be either land or building or plant or machinery or equipment, computers, furniture, fixtures, so many things. When you buy, it has to be brought in the books of accounts at some value. There is a value which is important. At what value you can recognize such an asset? You might simply say that it is purchase price. But it is beyond purchase price. Not only purchase price, something else as well need to be considered. What is that? The standard says very clearly that such kind of a fixed asset should be recorded on the basis of its historical cost. Historical cost means whatever amount you pay to acquire the asset, this plus all other additional costs necessary to get the ready for its use. Any other expenditure which you are incurring over and above the purchase price which you are incurring for putting the asset into business use. That means, suppose when you are buying an asset for a price of 50 million, in order to bring the asset to the current location, suppose say you pay a freight component of another 2-3 million. You spend another 3 million in terms of your installation, another 5 million for testing and commissioning. Only then you are going to use it for your business needs. So before putting the asset into business use, what you do? You bring, you install, you test and commission. So the total cost will be purchase price is 50, freight component is 2, installation component is another 3, testing and commissioning component is another 5. So 50 plus 2 plus 3 plus 5, which is equal to 60 million. That 60 million will be the value at which this asset will be recorded. So you will be passing an entry debiting asset, crediting cash. Hope this is clear. Any doubt you can ask me. See, just now I have told you, such kind of assets are accounted by considering various basic purchase price plus additional costs that are incurred to put the asset into use. What are such kind of costs? Some examples are given. Just I want you to kindly go through, read this slide and confirm that you have read and you are clear. Arshul, fine. Kindly go through this paragraph. Kindly go through this paragraph. We are understanding how at what price various assets are recorded in the books. In the case of a land, what are we going to do it? See, there are various costs what we need to consider so far as land is concerned. Say, for example, in the land, there will be a lot of trees, some other building structure. You will demolish the building structure or cut the trees, sell the timber, sell the wood involved in the case of a building, or some key materials of the building as scrap in the market. You would be realizing some income. So, what you will do from the total cost of this land, such kind of an income, what you are going to get will be reduced. You won't book such kind of a sale as an income in the pay until rather it will be reduced from the value cost of the land. The net cost only will be recorded as the cost of the land in the books. So this is a point you have to consider. That's what exactly the second paragraph talks about regarding the accounting for the land. So kindly go through and confirm. Now, what is the concept of depreciation? This is what I'm going to explain now. We have understood what is fixed asset, how to account for the fixed assets. Now, I'm going back to the Word file so that we need to have some workings. Now, say, for example, an asset value at which same is considered to be the depreciation of the asset. That is, so this depreciation, when an asset is recorded after considering the basic price, additional expenditure incurred up to the date of putting the asset into use, all this value will be debited to the asset. That value is considered to be the depreciable value. On this value, depreciation will be worked out. Say, for example, you are buying a machinery. The basic price is 100 million. Suppose, say, freight of 10 million is incurred. Site preparation cost, another 5 million spent. Installation cost of another 8 million incurred. Testing charges, 17 million. Once the testing is through, you can put the machinery into use. So the total value in this case will be the above value of 140 million is considered to be the depreciable value. This 140 million is going to be the cost of the asset. So this 140 million is, this is the value on which the depreciation will be worked out. Hope this is clear. Now, what is depreciation? Basically, when you see depreciation, you will say that it is wear and tear, reduction in the value of assets. So many different explanations you will be getting it. But understand, this 140 million expenditure which need to be brought to profit and loss statement as the same need to be matched against the revenue for the year. All expenditures are to be matched against the revenue. This is a common element. Principle is important. You all know. I don't have to explain what is matching principle. Without every expenditure, it is difficult for somebody to generate the revenue. So the expenditure is matched against the revenue. Now the question is, this 140 million, this asset is, say, useful life of said asset be 10 years, which means that for the next 10 years, fetch revenue for the company. As this asset is helping the business to generate a revenue for next 10 years, based upon its useful life, the expenditure of 140 million must be matched against this 10 years revenue. That is, every year some portion of 140 million only need to be transferred to profit and loss statement as the expenditure. And this process will continue for next 10 years. Are you clear? Are you clear? Any doubt you can ask me. What is last part? That is, out of this 140, you cannot transfer everything to the first year itself because this is contributing towards revenue for next 10 years. So some portion of 140 million will be transferred in the balance portion, year 2, 3, 4, 5. So some portion will be transferred to each and every year for the span of next 10 years. This process is what is said to be depreciation. Is it clear? So when you are going to transfer this 140 million, some portion to the P&L to match against the respective year's revenue for a span of 10 years, this process of transferring can be said to be depreciation. Very simple. So depreciation is an expenditure. It's an expense by all means. You cannot say that depreciation is a loss due to this reason. It's an expenditure, it's a portion of expenditure brought to the P&L to match against the corresponding year's revenue. So this matching will till the time the SIP helps the business to generate the revenue. Only then the matching will be proper. So if you have any doubt, you can ask me. Shall I proceed? Now I request you to kindly go through the slide which explains what is depreciation and net book value of fixed assets. This is very simple. What is depreciation? What is net book value? Both are very much connected. Kindly go through, understand, and ask me for any further clarifications, or you can confirm so that I can move on further. Fine. So I'm moving on. Leave it. How do you calculate the depreciation? Three important aspects are considered: estimated useful life, salvage value, depreciable amount of depreciable base. I have told you about depreciable amount, that's the value at which an asset is recorded in the books is what is said to be depreciable amount. This can otherwise be referred as the depreciable base. Salvage value means after the life is over, when you sell the asset, what is the net value, what you can get out of it, out of the sale. This is what is said to be salvage value. useful life. These three components are very, very important. And land is never depreciated because useful life of the land is unlimited. It is not determinable. You will not be able to determine the useful life of the land. Hence, no depreciation is computed. Probably there is a general saying, there is no depreciation for land because land value is always appreciating. That is exactly not the reason. The reason is this. Mainly because the useful life can never be determined. In this case, no depreciation is worked out in the case of this land. So, other than the piece of this land, any other asset, say building, plant, machinery, equipments, furniture, fixtures, everything, say for example, will be having a depreciable base or depreciable amount at which such assets are going to be recorded. That is historical price plus any additional cost incurred related to the asset up to the date of putting the asset into business use. That is what is said to be the depreciable amount. That next is estimated useful life is considered. Estimated salvage value is considered. Considering these three, you would be computing the value of depreciation. In order to compute various depreciation, what are the different methods available? One is straight line depreciation. This is very simple. The depreciable value divided by the estimated useful life will be giving you the straight line depreciation. You can kindly go through. I don't have to explain what is this depreciable base because just now I was telling you about this. So kindly go through this paragraph, this slide, and confirm that you are clear. Yeah, salvage value means, again, please understand, when you sell the asset after the useful life. So, say for example, you are having a bike. You are using the bike for 15 years. After 15 years, the life of the asset is bike is over, so you are going to sell it. You will give some 10,000 rupees, 5,000 rupees, or 15,000 rupees. That value is said to be the salvage value. Now, there is another method called double declining balance. Suppose in the case of a straight line method, there is a percentage. Say every year you are going to charge 10% on the total original value. Straight line, straight away 10% every year on the original value is going to be the depreciation. Double declining balance means the rate of depreciation instead of 10 is going to be 20 every year. Double. This method is applicable only in US. I'll demonstrate. Listen. I'll give you a simple calculation for your better understanding. Say value is 500 million. Depreciation is 10%. That means every year depreciation, year one, depreciation will be 10% of 500, which is equal to 50 million. Year 2, this goes for 10 years. Every year you are going to charge, say, 50 million straight away. So 500 million will be absorbed in the P&L. This is a normal method of depreciation, normal method. What is double declining method talks about? That's where exactly we need to understand. Rate is 20% per year instead of 10%. Say in this case, if you are going to absorb the depreciation in 10 years in the earlier method, here you will be absorbing the depreciation in 5 years' time. Hope this is clear. This is what is said to be double declining method. Any doubt you can ask me. Hello. Excuse me, kindly respond. Are you clear? Arshul? Now I request you to kindly go through this slide. Be clear and confirm. Shall I proceed? Third method is sum of the years digits method. We have seen what is straight line. We have seen what is double declining method. Now we are saying years digit method. I will explain. I'll demonstrate. Useful life is 10 years. This 10 years expressed as, see, year 10 plus 9 plus 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, 9, 8. It keeps declining. First year weightage is 10, second year weightage is 9, third year weightage is 8, sixth year weightage is 5, last year weightage is only 1. So when you sum this up, you are going to get 10, 15, 21, 28, 36, 55. This is the sum of the year's digit, total sum. Now, if you want to calculate the depreciation for year 1, $55 multiplied by, sorry, not 55, the value is 500 multiplied by 10 by 55. So, this will be 500 divided by 55 into 10, which is equal to 91 roughly. This is the depreciation for year 1. Depreciation for year 2. Nine divided by 55. That will be 500 divided by 55 into 9, which is equal to 81. Similarly, for year 3, it will be 8 by 55. Year 6, it will be 5 by 55. Last year, it will be 1 by 55. Very simple. So the value of depreciation keeps diminishing from first year to the last year. So higher depreciation will be charged in the year 1. As the year progresses, the depreciation keeps diminishing. So the sum of the years digits method follow an accelerated method of depreciation, because first year, earlier number of years, highest depreciation will be charged, and the depreciation will be diminishing as the year progresses. Now, if you want to find out the depreciation for the first 4 years, very simple. That is 500 multiplied by 19, 10 plus 9 plus 8 plus 7 plus 6. That is 21, 30, 40. 40 divided by 55. That is sum of the first 4 years. You want to, for 4 years, 10 plus 9 plus 8 plus 7, if you add, this will be giving you the sum of the depreciation, accumulated depreciation for 4 years. Similarly, we can calculate the depreciation for any number of years. This will be 364 roughly, rounded off to 364. Hope you are clear. Any doubt you can ask me. This method is what is said to be sum of the years digits method. Hello. Excuse me, please. Everybody to go through this slide, understand, confirm, so that I can move on further. Kindly let me know. Fine. I'll move on. This is a very simple method, units of production. I will explain. There is no need to demonstrate. It is very easy. Number of units produced during the year is considered as the base for calculating the depreciation rate. Suppose the useful life is 10 years for an asset. During the span of these 10 years, this asset is expected to produce a 10 lakh units. Instead of considering the number of years, we would be considering the total units produced by this asset during its useful life. Cost of the asset divided by number of units produced or expected to be produced by the asset over the span of useful life will be giving you the depreciation rate. This depreciation rate is multiplied with the value of the depreciation. Kindly go through, please. Shall I? See, as per the income tax rules of America, even they also consider the depreciation for tax purposes. You will be computing tax based upon the profitability. Profitability is arrived after charging the depreciation. We have seen so many different methods of depreciation charged by the company in reality. This depreciation MACRS, Modified Accelerated Cost Recovery System. This Modified Accelerated Cost Recovery System is the system which is applied by the taxation authority of the country. This is a common type of depreciation required to be applied by the US tax laws. For reporting purpose, you might be applying various depreciation, but in order to file the P&L and the balance sheet with the US tax system authorities, there's any method that is a straight line or sum of the years digit, production units, double declining, nothing is possible. You have to apply only modified accelerated cost recovery system, which is otherwise referred as MACRS. Always is 100% of the cost of the asset. That is cost, basic cost plus any additional cost required for making it ready for use, the same cost, depreciable value. You can anticipate a salvage value that is subtracted from the original cost for calculating depreciation. Now, as per the modified accelerated cost recovery system, how you compute the tax, that's what, how you compute the depreciation, that's what I'm going to tell you right now. Hope these 4 points are clear. Any doubt you can ask me. Straight line depreciation. The accelerated method itself means that earlier years highest depreciation will be charged. As the year progresses, the depreciation will be low. So, when a company says the useful life is 10, the income tax authorities may not be considering it as 10, they might be considering the useful life only as, say, 4 years or 5 years. And accordingly, during the span of these 5 years, entire depreciation would be recognized that to year 1, depreciation will be high. Then depreciation for the year 2 will be lower than year 1. And in 5 years' time, the entire depreciation would be acknowledged by the income tax purposes. Such a system is what is said to be modified accelerated system. Modified accelerated cost recovery system. And how the straight line depreciation is going to play a vital role for the tax purpose. When you are going to use the straight line depreciation, we normally do not subtract the salvage value. And I request you to kindly go through the next 2 paragraphs, which method of depreciation is the best. Kindly go through. This is just a small paragraph which make you understand what is best. Kindly go through, confirm and confirm that you are clear and confirm it back to me, please. Kindly go through even this paragraph. This is continuation of the previous slide. You have read 2 paragraphs. This is the 3rd paragraph. Kindly go through. Fine. The next topic related to the fixed assets, property and equipment is the term impairment. Long-lived assets means tangible non-current assets or intangible non-current assets. Impairment means loss. When the fair value is falling below the original cost less accumulated depreciation, that is the book value, carrying value. That is, original cost less accumulated depreciation will be carrying value of the asset in the balance sheet. Suppose say original value is 500, total life is 10, 6 years over, 6 years depreciation is 300, 500 original cost less 6 years depreciation 300 will be 200. This 200 will be the carrying value at the beginning of the year 7. Are you clear? If this carrying value is, say for example, compared with the fair value, that is the fair value, best price which somebody can realize from this asset when it is being sold in the market right now. That price is what is said to be fair value. If you are selling this asset right now in the market, what is the best price you can fetch? That value is fair value. When you compare, if the fair value is lower, the carrying value is say 500 minus 300 is 200. But when you are going to sell it right now, you are not selling. When you sell, the best price what you can get from the market, when you assess, that is equal to 160. Your book is 200. Actually, what you can realize from the market is only 160. That value is fair value. So, fair value is lower than the carrying value. Then we can say that there is an impairment happened to the asset. Impairment means loss. 200 book value. Actually, the fair value is only 160, 40 is the loss. Are you clear now? Now, this loss, this fall in the value, fall below its original cost less accumulated depreciation can happen due to so many reasons. What are the reasons? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Kindly read and confirm this, please. One, two, three, four, five. 5 reasons. Arshul, kindly confirm. Fine. See, this point number, that is slide number 78. I will discuss it tomorrow. Why? Because this involves a lot of calculations. Probably we may not be able to complete it today. So I will take it up for discussion tomorrow. Because this simply I can't give you a theoretical explanation without giving a substantiation for these discussions. Figures, calculations are inevitable. So kindly, I will take it up tomorrow. and hope whatever we have been discussing so far is clear to you. Any doubt you have so far, you can ask me. Any doubt regarding whatever we have discussed so far, you can ask me. Any clarifications required? Fine. Fine. So I will catch you up tomorrow evening. We will continue discussing this impairment. Uh, Certain concepts I need to make it very clear. We will discuss it tomorrow. Good night.